Oh, I was muted. Good morning. Hope everyone had a very pleasant holiday and a little bit of a break.
Morning.
Let's see, who have we got? I'll give everybody probably an extra couple minutes to get signed on today because I think we're probably just, trying to relearn how to do everything.
I knew I was out of it when I
went to log on to my MacBook this morning and completely forgot my MacBook password. I could write an email on my phone to the tech to get into my Mac. Totally, like the only thing I could think of was like my Gmail password and all, everything that isn't the MacBook
Yeah.
password.
Everything like once you got into the MacBook, you'd be okay, but got to get in there first. Let's see. Ian's not with us yet. I feel confident he'll show up.
You make it sound like he died.
Ian's no longer with us. I'd be so upset. I'd be upset even if he just like moved schools. I love that guy. Christian's here. Brendan's here. Hayward is here. No Troy yet. Okay. Eli, Nate, Chip, Sterling, Hondurius. Okay, I'll give these other two just a couple minutes. Anybody have any particularly exciting stories from over the holiday? Do anything fun? Get anything good?
The only thing that I can think about that happened over the break is the Packers locked up the number 1 seed in the playoffs.
Oh, are you happy about
Very, yeah.
that? Congratulations.
Yeah, I know that doesn't, like, I'm probably the only person that cares about that. I know one of the, or maybe both of the Kellys are Packers fans. I know at least one of them, and I still don't know which one is which, by the way. That was just
well, Kelly Buster hasn't been there for a while. I think she's supposed to be back, but she had a baby.
Oh wow.
And so she was out for a good long while actually on but Kelly Asia is the short one that's always there.
Okay, then I know she's a Pack fan.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
Okay, well maybe if I go ahead and put in this attendance, they'll see that they're marked absent and be like, oh shoot, I need to be in class, because that happens a lot. Okay, so just fair warning, I feel like this week will be kind of tough just to like get back into the swing of things. I feel like it will be for me. I did not want to leave my bed this morning. But because of that, and because we're all virtual for a couple weeks, I wanted to kind of start out fairly easy, not like overload anybody at first. And also, for the record, I did almost nothing school related over the break. So if you're like, where are my grades?
There's I should have written a ballad and I didn't. That was the one thing out through the cracks was the ballad.
It was a lot of work to get in like all at once, but oh my goodness, Sterling, $500 amp for free. My gosh, did Santa bring it to you?
I was at a mattress store.
Oh, dang.
And the guy let me see his like guitar because he brought his guitar.
Yeah.
And he was a musician, but before this whole COVID thing, that's what he used to do. And he let me play his guitar, and then he was like, he doesn't have any use for this amp anymore, and he's getting a new one or something like that. So he gave it to me.
That's awesome.
Nice.
This is a random question, but obviously you guys, I hope I'm not spoiling anything for anybody, but I hope that you're all old enough to like know the truth about Santa. Some people don't know until really late in their lives. But do any of you guys still like talk about Santa like he's real with your family? Like, oh, I want Santa to bring me.
Okay, I'm about to get really dry for a minute, and I think I'm gonna miss a lot of people, but I'm hoping that somebody can stay with me.
Okay.
So for all the gifts that I gave, I wrote from science because Santa.
I think that's actually hilarious. From science. We did, like in my family, we did that for way too long. Like we all knew the truth, but we were like, what do you want Santa to bring you? Like, we don't do it now, but
I still make a Christmas list, but it's more like here's a
right, like what you want from your well, that's true, Eli, but
yeah,
like in the Tim Allen, the Santa Claus kind of way. Which, by the way, did you guys know that Mr. Benvenuti's cousin wrote the movie The Santa Claus, and he also wrote Space Jam?
What?
Wow.
I know.
Oh,
Remarkable.
that song's gonna be stuck in my head. Come on and slam, and welcome to the jam.
Yeah, that's true. The guy's name is Leo Benvenuti, and he wrote those and several more. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Hold on.
I think Kicking and Screaming with Will Ferrell was one of his.
Let me see if I can find like a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, like on IMDb and stuff, he's got his page, and I think he wrote the first Santa Claus, but then the other ones, like in the opening credits, are like based on characters created by Leo Benvenuti. So that's pretty cool.
Okay.
I think I've actually seen this name and was like, I wonder if this is actually like related to Mr. Benvenuti.
Yeah,
this is a while ago.
He is related. That's pretty cool.
Like 5 movies.
Yeah, he wrote some of the classics. Like, oh God, every person my age like grew up on Space Jam.
The Santa Claus 2, and then he did a movie called Kickin' and Screamin' in 2005, which I have never
heard. Will Ferrell is in that movie.
Okay, and then he did Space Jam, and then something that just says Damon. Oh, it's a TV series that only lasted for a season in 1998.
Oh, okay. I've never heard of that. But pretty cool though.
So,
I don't really know what he does now. I mean, I imagine he's still in the biz, but I don't think he's like made a movie in a while.
You write Space Jam, you kind of live on an island. That's
right. I mean, like he's probably set for life. I really was hoping, like he lives in California, so he didn't come to Michigan like for the funeral and stuff. I was really hoping to meet him, but also like, how do you approach someone at a funeral and be like, I love your work? Okay, let's get started. I just want to like talk to you a little bit about what we're gonna be doing this week, and then we'll get started. I may not keep you the whole time today. We might not need to. Like I said, I kind of want to ease everybody back in. I sort of love having you guys like all virtual, not because I don't enjoy having you in front of me, but because I like having everybody in one spot. That's nice.
Oh, I heard Dominic was at the school. Does anybody know if Dominic is at the school?
No, because we're not at the school. Nobody, like maybe Miss Blackmore or someone is there. Why would he be? Why would he be?
He's leave it up to Dom.
He's so weird.
Dominic.
He was coming to school like every day, even before.
Yeah, I know. And I talked to her. I was like, I don't think the teachers are gonna be there. You're definitely not there.
I'm definitely not there. Yeah. We can come in this week if we want to, but I don't think most people will.
Lovely foot. Thank you. Can I guess what size you are? I reckon you're a size like 6, 6.5. No. 7. 4.5.
I'm hearing somebody. I don't know. I was like trying to hear the conversation.
I was.
We like high 5 feet. Can you just
absolutely not?
Okay. Is it a SpongeBob, Donny? No. No. All
right. What are you watching?
Oh, the city that I know under the sea is Atlantis.
I hear British people. I'm gonna mute that. Sorry, Corey. I'm gonna mute that, even though I like their accents. Okay, so today we are going to start our next section. Oh, here comes Ian. Let me go ahead and change his attendance. And he's not dead, so that's nice. Okay. So what we're going to be doing this week is we're going to start our next era today. We're going to do the notes on that, and that's really all we're going to do today. For the next 3 days, we are going to watch a movie. I have watched movies in classes where we're all virtual. And it's a lot easier actually doing it all virtual than hybrid. That can actually be kind of confusing. Obviously, it's not like the best situation to watch a movie, but we're going to. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that tomorrow, because there might be some like different options for how you can watch it. But it's going to be kind of our little launching pad into the romantic era. And then after that, we'll get into some texts. And the movie is based on one of the most famous texts in romantic literature.
What movie is it?
It is Jane Eyre, which there are like a ton of movie versions of it. I've seen most of them. And I think I know which one I'm going to use because I've always used the same one, but I may have to change it just because I don't know that it's going to be super accessible. We'll see. So today I've already posted on, what's that thing called that we use? Canvas. It's anytime I say Google Classroom, you know what I mean. It's Canvas. I've already posted the notes there and you can look at those, but we're going to go through them together to get a little bit more clarity on some of it. So I'm opening mine up and I'm gonna share my screen with you guys. Okay, I trust everyone can see this. And I'm gonna just hit play on this. So if you type in the chat, I'm probably not gonna be able to see it right away, but it'll be fine. Obviously, I didn't make this presentation either because, come on, because my name is not Dr. Brenda Cornell, and this is not English 2323. But so when we're talking about the romantic era, I think when you hear the word romantic, you tend to think like love and like romantic comedies and stuff, but that's not what it always means. And you guys probably have a better, excuse me, maybe I won't hit play because I think it's going to progress automatically, which is very annoying. Here, we'll just do it this way. You guys might have a better understanding of that than some people would because you guys know about different eras of music and you're familiar with the idea of romantic music. So you might realize that it's not just about romantic love, although sometimes love can be the subject of romantic art, meaning literature, music, actual visual art, or whatever. It was sort of an international artistic and philosophical movement that redefined ways that we in Western civilization thought about ourselves in the world, which is, that can kind of be said of any new era of literature. So the dates that we're looking at here is like 1798. That's when this book, Lyrical Ballads, which we know what ballads are, by Wordsworth and Coleridge. And then it ends in like 1832, which is when several important people die. We're not gonna like get into them. You don't really need to know who they are. So it did affect all of the arts, literature, music, painting, philosophy. I don't necessarily consider philosophy an art, but we'll go with it. Starting in 1770s, extending through the second half of the 19th century. It can be called the Age of Revolutions because it does actually include the American Revolution, which was in 1776, and the French Revolution, which was 1789. So sometimes it's called the Age of Revolutions. I'm not going to refer to it by that very much, but you can kind of see like this is a big time of change in the world. And other countries affect other countries. So just, you know, the fact that there wasn't, I mean, we, the British in this class, are fighting the Americans at the time. So that's still applicable. It was a time of massive energy, intellectual energy, social artistic energy. It set out to transform not only the theory and practice of art, but also the ways that humans perceive the world. And some of its ideas are even still around today. And we're going to look at some of those. So the first big one I would say is the role of imagination. So, from before with, the 17th and 18th century, it was very based on like reason and logic, and not so much anymore. Like once we move into the Romantic era, imagination is kind of replacing reason now as the supreme faculty of the mind, like the big thing that we're capable of, which is why there's a lot of creative activity in this period. And for the record, in English literature and American literature, romantic, like you're studying all these different eras, and you have like a little bit of like some poetry, some sermons in America. We haven't looked really at any like huge texts yet, primarily because there just really weren't any. The Romantic era is where novels start happening. And because of that, because there's like this new possibility, and because there's so much creativity flourishing, there's just a lot more content now. So for Romantic thinkers, the imagination was like the ultimate creative power. It's the closest thing we have to divine creative powers. The poet Wordsworth said that humans not only perceive and experience the world around them, they also in part create it, which I think is a fair thing to say. The imagination unites reason and feeling, which enables humans to reconcile differences and opposites. And that's kind of a central idea for romantics. And then also the imagination enables humans to read nature as a system of symbols. And we'll look into that a little bit more as well. Nature. There's a huge celebration of nature in Romantic literature. Nature is often presented as a work of art from the divine imagination, meaning like God had this amazing creative imagination, and through that he created this beautiful thing, nature and everything in it. People could kind of go to nature as like a healing power, which I think to a certain degree people still do, like really outdoorsy people, people who love to hike and camp and stuff. They kind of see being in nature as something that's like healing for them. And it's a refuge from civilization, somewhere you can go, obviously, where there are like not as many people around, not as much noise, and you can kind of focus in a different way. Nature was viewed as organic and alive rather than mechanical or rational. And nature was viewed as a source of refreshment and meditation, which again is something that I think people kind of still do. So getting a little bit into what I was talking about earlier, symbolism and myth, there is a lot more symbolism coming out in Romantic literature than we've seen before. And I think that's due in large part to people's like ability to be more imaginative and get more creative with what they're able to imagine. So symbolism was valued as the human means for imitating nature in art. You could simultaneously suggest a lot of things in a creative way, and that was based on a desire to express the inexpressible through the resources of language. And I kind of love that phrase, just because like obviously I'm an English teacher, I love words, I love reading, but I think that's one of the things that I really love about it, is that sometimes you can't put words to a feeling, and then you read something and you're like, that was the thing I was trying to say. And that's cool. Okay, so emotion, lyric poetry, and the self. There's a lot greater emphasis on the importance of intuition, instincts, and feelings when we move into the Romantic era. Obviously, that's really personal. There's like intuition, instincts, and feelings. Those are all really personal things. So you're being more reflective. You're paying more attention to your own thoughts, thinking about the way you think, which is called metacognition. That's not important. I just happen to know that. Wordsworth's definition of good poetry was, I think that's supposed to say was or not as, the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. And that was kind of a turning point in literary history, because I think it gave people a kind of a guidepost to like what poetry should be, which I've gotten into such not arguments, but like debates with students about what poetry is, because it's so hard to define. Like there's all these rules, but sometimes there are no rules depending on the kind of poetry. And like, you know, poetry when you see it, but that doesn't always mean you know how to produce it. Don't ever, for the record, don't ever get Bryce started on like what is poetry, because he'll have an absolute breakdown about it. An ultimate source of poetry was found in the individual artist and his or her tradition. So like what you have going on in your own life is kind of the ultimate source of poetry. I mean, do it at your own risk, Troy, you know. It is fun to see him break down. There's an immense value to art. It's a source of illumination of the world within the self. And what does that mean? It gives you a way to view something much larger than yourself. It gives you an idea of how the world works, but on a personal level, if that makes sense. So this led to a prominence for first person lyric poetry, which means that the speaker became less of a persona and more the direct person of the poet. And an example of that might be like when we were looking at ballads, one of the things about ballads was that the narrator, if it was a first person narrator, was usually like from the outside looking in and just like telling us a story. It wasn't, the speaker wasn't the person in the poem or in the ballad. And what they're saying is that now we're kind of changing that. And if the poem is using first person pronouns, then that person is probably either a character in the poem or it's coming directly from the poet. Like the example that they give is Walt Whitman, which he was American, so like we're not gonna look at his stuff, but he's got a very famous poem called Song of Myself, and it's Walt Whitman talking. It's not like Walt Whitman giving somebody else's perspective or like becoming a character. In this case, the speaker and the poet are the same. And there's also like a lot of autobiographical verses that were described as poetry about someone else. We may or may not look into some of those. I'm not sure yet. Okay, so we never really talked about the Age of Reason being called neoclassicism, but it's just a lot of these eras have like a lot of different terms for them. So some contrasts, we have talked about how each new era kind of reflects and reacts to the era that came before it. I mean, I feel like y'all can probably see that just even in like the generations that we're in now. Like your parents probably don't see eye to eye with everything that their parents saw eye to eye with, because they want to like rebel and kind of set themselves apart. And then you guys will kind of do the same thing to them. Like you're going to have stuff that you disagree with or like just see differently. And that's totally normal. That's just kind of what we do. We just, humans kind of tend to rebel against what they've been taught before. So there'll be like a long period of literature that's really focused on like reason and logic, and then it'll switch to emotion and imagination and creativity, and then that'll switch to like science and, you know, very like left brain kind of stuff. It's just reacting to what came before it. So here there's a shift in focus from rationalism to the imagination. There's a shift towards a more expressive orientation toward the literary arts, more freedom of expression, more freedom of the individuals. What's in the Constitution? I'm gonna move on and I'll check the chat again in a second. Individualism, like I mentioned, is a big one. And y'all may have studied at some point Jean-Jacques Rousseau. I'm trying to think of what class you would have learned about him in. Maybe you haven't. But he said this quote, which I think is definitely a good way of embodying their idea of individualism. I am not made like anyone I have seen. I dare believe that I am not made like anyone in existence. If I am not superior, at least I am different. That's a really good way to sum that up, because that's sort of what they're saying about individuals is that, you know, I feel like we all sort of think that we're the main characters of our own stories, and we are. Everybody's different from everybody else, and in the Romantic era they were saying we should celebrate that and really like focus on what makes you different and kind of celebrate that. Okay, so the romantic hero is unusual, and there's like all these funny little pictures of different kinds of heroes. Romantic heroes are not necessarily like heroes we've seen before. They're not necessarily like a Beowulf kind of hero. And I mean, it says not always cowboys. I don't know why that's their this person's example of a hero, but the hero might be an artist, because obviously this is like hugely focused on art. The hero could be striving beyond the moral restrictions of society, meaning maybe they might not always act in the way that society would find to be perfectly morally acceptable. And sometimes it is like a hero who reappears from the ancient classics. So like a new version of, I'm trying to think of like a classic hero, and my mind is blank. But they're going to be a little bit different. A romantic hero might be a lot like moodier, darker, more emotional than people are used to seeing. Okay, the everyday and the exotic. Romantic writers embraced everyday realism, meaning they tried to write things as they actually are. Like they're not trying to romanticize, actually. They're not trying to make things seem better than they are. They kind of get into the gritty reality of what life is really like. And as a result, some of the literature is like kind of dark or even a little depressing. In fact, the movie we're going to watch, it's depressing for a long time before it gets happy at all. And then it gets more depressing, and then it gets okay. They also sought out folk legends of the past and promoted exotic ideas suggested by technology and the imagination, such as, y'all will be familiar with these just from like pop culture. A beautiful soul in an ugly body, as in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, although I don't know that I'd say he had a beautiful soul. Or I think more appropriately, Victor Hugo's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Even if you've only seen the Disney version, you can kind of understand what that means, because he's like grotesque to look upon, but he's a super sweet, nice person who tries to help others. Okay, so the romantic artists in society. The Romantics were often ambivalent towards the outside world. If you don't know what ambivalent means, it's like you have two very strong opposing opinions. Like sometimes I'm really ambivalent towards like hanging out with people because I like my friends, but I really want to stay home. I'm ambivalent about that. On the one hand, they were socially and politically passionate. They were involved in worthy causes and social issues. But on the other hand, they sometimes isolated themselves from the public. So that is a bit of an ambivalence. They want to be involved. They want to make big changes, but they also want to kind of stay to themselves. So a spread of the romantic spirit. All of the arts, from music to painting, sculpture, architecture, they were all affected by and continue to be affected by the revolutionary energy underlying the romantic movement. Strains of romanticism infuse every age and every generation since it started. And like I said, this is the era where the most stuff is produced. Like there's just more literature to pull from than any other era that came before it. And and that's it. We're excited. Okay. So I didn't change anything, you fool. Whatever. Stop share. Okay, so some of the main things to kind of keep an eye out for in romantic literature. Individualism is a huge one. What makes us all different, being able to stand out in society. Emotion, we're kind of reacting against the reason from the age before and are now focusing a lot more on emotion and feelings. Realism, like making sure you tell stories like they actually are, not trying to like sugarcoat anything, but really show how hard life can be sometimes. Imagination, creativity, incorporation of the arts, and heroes not necessarily being like morally upstanding and awesome. Those are sort of the big things. So I'm about to let you guys go, but I will talk to you in the morning about how we're going to watch this movie. And like I said, you might have a couple of options of like how you want to watch it. But we'll deal with that tomorrow. Anything for the good of the group before I let you guys go? Okie dokie. Well, hope everybody had a lovely break, and I will see y'all tomorrow.